Let's go into our next topic very quickly. So we have the reports that the House of Representatives passed a bill through its second reading proposing 6 months imprisonment or 100,000 naira fine for citizens who refuse to vote in the general elections. The private members' bill, sponsored by Speaker Abbas Tajudeen and Honorable Daniel Ago, seeks to amend the Electoral Act of 2002. According to the section of the bill, a person who has attained the majority age of 18 years and refuses to perform their civic duty to vote commits an offense and is liable to conviction, the fine not exceeding 100,000 naira, or imprisonment for not exceeding 6 months. What are your thoughts on this? Is this necessary? Joining us from our Abuja studios is Executive Director, Peering, Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, Mr. Ezenwa Nwago. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us. Before I come to you, I'd like to hear the ladies' thoughts on this. Do you think it's important for our nation to commit a fine to Nigerians if they refuse to vote, especially in the coming elections?
As a voter, I feel that compelling anything with a punishment usually doesn't get what you want. I believe that it's more of an advocacy that we need more than that punishable offense, making a punishable offense. I think people should understand that it's a responsibility for you to contribute to who your leaders are by involving themselves in voting. But when you say it is compulsory and you put a punishment to it, I will do it as an assignment, I'll do it as a chore, but I'm not doing it because I understand the responsibility being placed upon me. That being said, over the last few elections that we've had as a country, our presidency, every leader has been decided by the minority, very, very minor minority. So I feel the need where there's an agitation for more involvement so that we can have a more robust inclusion of people. Yet punishing people for not voting is not the way, personally.
Okay, I think that there's nothing wrong as a nation in standing on what you believe would help move your nation forward, right? I know many countries where it is very compulsory for you to vote. I don't know if there's a punishment attached to it, but they made it in such a way that the citizens, whether by their choice or by the government choosing for them, understand the importance of coming out to vote. The past few elections, we had very minimal votes compared to all the noise that was made during the election. You would expect that when you get to the polls, you will see the numbers in droves. So we are beginning to see that we are people who would sit on the sidelines and complain. And when it's time to now put our mouth or put our money where our mouth is, it becomes a problem. So if a government says that in this our nation, we want to make it compulsory that everybody votes. If you do not vote, for one, I don't like the jail term that's given. You will pay a fine of so and so amount of money. Then you choose whether you are going to vote or not. Because we need to get to a point where we all can be collective in how we choose our leaders. But I also like that they add technology, because the world is changing. We want our young people to be a part of these elections. We want our young people to be a part of governance. We cannot keep doing things the way it's done in 19 Mbochie and expect to have these Gen Zs join in that. Many people will not want to send their children out because of what happens at the polls. Yeah. Even adults that go out. That the day when I voted for this past election, my mouth was in my hat, or my hat was in my mouth, because we're afraid of anything that was going to happen. People were coming to collect ballot boxes, gunshots were, those are some of the things that make people say, whoa, I want to stay in my house. I'm not interested. Whoever you elect, right? But if we make it in such a way that we pay attention to every strata of the country, the people who can come out physically, the people who can sit on their bed and vote on their phones, you see that many more people will participate without any fear of, reprisal attacks, any fear of being injured, any fear of being killed, because we still have a situation of very violent elections in some of our countries.
I hear you, because I'll come to you in a minute, because the numbers from last elections, 93 million actually registered. So there's a lot of sensitization compared to the previous elections. there was many advocacy coming out. I mean, I remember that time it was back to back. So people came out to register.
Yeah.
But only about a quarter
came out to vote.
Mm-hmm. So it's not so much about the advocacy. It's more about people's decision. And that's where the factors of violence, security comes in.
Yeah.
But in that, I know a lot of people have been advocating for electronic voting, which I think is a good idea. But the truth is that in a nation, this is Nigeria we're talking about. Our people.
We can do this thing.
In a civilized society where everybody, the people, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want to castigate Nigeria as not forward thinking. But the truth of where we are as a country is that where our people are still getting a hang of technology. So sometimes it might sound good for the middle class, average, the above middle class people to say, oh, let us do electronic. But there are some people that don't understand it, that will be disadvantaged. So I'm just saying that there are different factors that makes it difficult to implement that. But however, you're right, we need to find new solutions.
Yeah.
But let me come to you before I go to our guest in Abuja.
Okay, so this is a welcome,
development.
This is a welcome general rule. I would like to read the exceptions.
Okay.
The exceptions being that I would like to see if this bill has addressed the causes of why people would not come out to vote. Check records. Since I started voting when I turned 18, I have not missed an election. But every time, the people who are most interested in governance are the older ones. They were the ones who knew how to stand when it wasn't risky, put up with it, and now still keep putting up with it. A lot of young people, when they run the first one,
they don't go.
In fact, there was one slap that my husband witnessed at his polling unit. Jesus. Every time he describes that slap, he said, oh, that guy don't feel see again. I'm sure he can't see again. Every time he describes that slap and the number of bottles that were flying, he didn't go back for the gubernatorial elections.
Imagine.
After voting for that presidential election, he just by witnessing slap. So we have not addressed, there's a general rule, there's a general apathy that comes from laziness and the disinterest from the general generation of people now, Gen Zs, like we like to call them.
But they came out
they come out in certain areas.
Yeah, okay.
It's still the Gen Zs who broke bottles in certain other areas who have been trained by politicians. Until we address most of these fears, and when election polling units do not, I personally do not like my polling units. It is too tribalistic.
Oh.
Every elections, the only reason somebody will pushed me at the election at my polling unit was because I was not looking like their tribe, and it was the conversation. Look at them. You know, it was too much of an aggressive place. So when we are done with the voters' education, to change mindset and a lot of things, where I can go and vote and even take my child to witness how it is done.
Process. People
it is not a safe place. We have not addressed most of the issues.
Short break. When we come back, we bring in our guest to hear his thoughts. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We still have the Executive Director, Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, Mr. Izenwa Mago. Sir, I'd like you to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on this new possible law that might be enacted very soon?
Well, I think we are responding to the frustration of what we are low voter turnout. And the frustration is deepening because of the statistics that you even talked about. In recent elections, we have just merely 28% of voters turning out to vote. But when you then compare that with the number of registered voters, you ask the question, why do people go to register when they probably will not be voting? The first probable reason will be that the voter's card in Nigeria is also a means of identification.
Wow.
And other means of identification, you have to pay. Whether you are looking for the international passport, you're looking for the driver's license, you're looking for the NIN, the citizens are going to pay, but the voter's card is free. So for many people, it's just one way of having a means of identification. The second reason is also what I call community collusion.
Okay.
Communities are told that their voting strength has something to do with the amenities that will come to their community. So during voter registration, communities compromise voting officials, the security agents, and up their voting strength through all kinds of means. Okay. And then, in spite of all the cleaning that is done by INEC, you still find out that that collusion, they are not able to completely eliminate it. So you have a register that, in all honesty, needs to be worked upon. So your 93 million voting strength may not be correct. And if you notice, we also don't do anything about people who have passed. Between the time of that voter registration and today, many people will have passed. And so you have that huge challenge. But that's on one part. So the big challenge, like I said, the frustration is citizens not voting. Should it be punished by law? Should we respond to it through advocacy? Is voting a duty or a right? One of my colleagues there talked about countries where they are into mandatory voting or compulsory voting. About 21 countries since January 2023 are into compulsory voting, and there are different kinds of taxes. But the challenge with Nigeria is that when we take things from outside, we subvert the real intent of those things. It will become a means here of punishing the poor, who may, out of the fact that government no longer exists for the majority of the citizens. As you know, many people provide their water, many people provide their electricity. Ballot boxes get to the remotest part of the villages, but development don't get to those places. True. So we cannot punish our citizens for failure on our own part to even make government responsible enough to become something that they can look forward to and participate in. But for me also is to say that not voting is a form of voting. Okay. For the citizens who think that they are not going to participate, by your not participating, you have voted for what you don't want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we cannot criminalize participation. We shouldn't criminalize non-participation by jail terms. What we should do is to increase advocacy, rework our country in a way that it makes meaning for the generality of our citizens. And I listen to many people. Gen Zs don't only exist in urban centers. There are also Gen Zs in our backwater communities who are participating in voting and lining up. The challenge is elite indolence, elite non-interestedness, and the cure for it may not necessarily be
punishment,
jail terms and taxes. But what we need to do is to increase advocacy, bring more people to understand that the cost of bread, that the cost of electricity, the cost of medicines in the hospital is contained in that permanent voter's card that they carry about in their wallets.
But my concerns are, because as Nigeria, we're very vocal when it comes to expressing our views on governance, policies, and all that. If we're going to be speaking so much on social media, don't you think that we have to have stringent measures to ensure that those people who are expressing themselves also must ensure that they participate in these elections? Because the truth is that it's one thing to have a voice, but it's another thing to actually use the power we have. So yes, there's advocacy, but this law might be able to force the hands of Nigerians to understand that rebuilding the nation is not about the leaders. It's about us, the people, getting the people we in. Because we've seen in some states in the last elections, some shocking results came out where people from other smaller parties won in certain either local governments or House of Reps, and they're wondering, how did that happen? Because those people in that committee decided to vote. They didn't vote the ruling party of that state. So we can see that on a national level if Nigerians actually come out to vote. So don't you think this would somewhat be a good thing to force the hands of Nigerians to actually come out and vote?
Well, I'm tempted to agree with you, but I also just avert my mind to the packets of cigarettes that you see where they say voters are liable to die young. Okay. I don't know how much that has helped to reduce smoking. I think what will reduce smoking will be to show people the real consequences of smoking. So the big challenge for me always is that we always think that the law is the silver bullet to solving every problem. we need to be a bit more intentional in how we educate, how our civic education processes are undertaken, what more responsibilities, what more resources can we give to our media, to the National Orientation Agency, to INEC itself, to be able to engage in proper civic education. In Ghana, they employ civic educations year round, who go to people, knock their doors, talk to them, educate them. Those are some of the things we can do. Our response to every challenge is law, throw a law to it, but then we need to interrogate the laws that we have. How much has it been able to deal with the challenges that confront us in other areas? So I think that for a civic, right, that we now want to convert into a duty, what needs to happen will be more education, more civic education, more advocacy rather than punitive intervention.
Okay, sir, I am agreeing with you because that was not how I felt before you started speaking, but I could see from what you have said, the reason why it's important that government takes a step back instead of putting this sort of law to do more advocacy. But do you think that the government is actually paying attention to some of the reasons why many people are not voting? Do you think they are making plans to sort of solve that issue instead of just going ahead to make this law? Do you think that is in the works?
My sister, just go and look at the budget of NOA. If our government is serious in civic mobilization and education, you will see the kind of money they will put there. The budget of NOA is miserly, really miserly. Look at for TVC, for instance, how much comes from government institutions to mobilize citizens about even what they are doing. Sometimes government does so much, but they don't invest in even letting the citizens know what they are doing. That's the first part. The other thing will be how much responsibility are our governments. And many times we just talk about the federal government. 52% of the resources of the country come to the federal, 48 go to the states, and then this 52 of the federal is shared among the 36 states and the FCT. The 48%, the states use them. If the states were responsible in ensuring that government makes meaning for the generality of citizens who live in their states, most of the agitations that we see, most of the laid-backness that we see, but not voting is not just a big challenge. There is also a lead disinterestedness. I will tell you, Etiosa local government, there was Etiosa federal constituency in Lagos, had a by-election, and that is where you have your Lekki, your Ikoyi, your Victoria Island, and the rest of them. With all the noise that is made on social media, just less than 12% of the people who registered in that place came out to vote in that election. Let me pause you. Go back to Kebbi, where the same kind of election held. 60% of the citizens in that place came out. So we need to do much more, and I would rather insist that there is more advocacy, more resources is put to educating citizens, making them aware of their rights and their responsibilities. Let me pause you rather than the kind of interventions that we want to have.
I have activist lawyer Kabir Akingbolu on the phone. Good morning, sir. Thanks for calling. You're live.
It's a pleasure for having me on the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead, sir. Good morning.
When you look at the whole thing, the way it is, I want to think that yes, if government is doing, we need civic orientation and education. Voters education is very important because people don't know. Again, we need to conduct a credible election because the idea of the people not coming out, this burnout of the father, after all, they are not going to count the vote. But I am saying it's a wrong posture, it's a wrong behavior by the people. Like a situation whereby Nigeria, for instance, we say we're about 200 million people in population, but less than 20 million people voted. Atiku got 6 million plus, Obi got 6 million plus, our president got 8 million plus. If you add everything together, about 20 million people, 20 million voters, it means just 20 million people are deciding the fate of Nigeria. People are not coming out. And don't be surprised. Let me cite this example. When you see some programs that are not even very educative, people vote with money as much as 30 naira per vote. They vote as many times as possible, and you have about 3 billion votes in some of these cable programs that we watch around. But this is your civic duty. You are not performing it. We should not be able to. We will not be able to complain if you are not participating in the electoral process. Let's not participate and vote. It is our responsibility. However, the government has agency like National Orientation Agency. It's not enough to vote money straight. I had the last speaker saying paucity of funds. Even the fund is much. If you are not supervising the way the fund is utilized to ensure that people are educated about the advantages of voting or taking part in the electionary process, it will be in vain. So I think government should do it. But as to a law, forcing people to vote, I don't think it will be possible because enforcement would be impossible. Exactly. In the sense that a country where people are hungry, you want to now make laws to force them to come and vote.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Tokwe.
Okay, so thank you so much. I feel like this law, if it passed, will build resentment against the government as opposed to getting them to actually see the positivity or the advantage of getting involved in the election. But that being said, I'm happy you highlighted the lack of budget for NOA because it was a conversation. I was having a conversation with somebody about tax and advocacy for tax, and they say, go and meet NOA. I say, NOA does not have, people don't analyze the budget. They don't have the money. But who do you think will be the most important segment for us to target? Because I'm looking at our universities. Many of the people in our universities are at that place where we can catch them. Do you think that we might be putting the attention on the wrong set of people? Maybe we should be engaging professors and not NOA, or even talking about any of the agencies, like let our professors start educating our students in the university, our young Nigerian citizens, to start seeing the power of the importance of voting and getting them involved. And the statistics even favor that we have more students. Our median age is very young.
What that was for you?
Are you talking with me?
Yeah.
Sir, it was you, sir. The question was
so
you, sir.
The first challenge will be to look at even student union elections in the universities that you talk about. You know, the universities, if you go there, they say, 31 million, 30,000 militants last wise, 40,000, 60,000 militants, OAU, UNILA. At the end of the day, the number that elects the student union governments in those universities is even worse than what we are talking about at the national level. So it's about our attitude to governance. It has to do with how we take responsibility, how we want to see things. Even in estates where we live, in many places, in urban cities where people live in estates, they live in those estates. They don't participate in the election of their own estates. You know, so it's an attitude, and what can cure that is advocacy. What can cure that is consistent, civic education. So it's not, the voting challenge is not just at voting leaders at the political level. It's our attitude generally to leadership and how we perceive leadership. And then people sit down and say, the elections, they do not count, and all of that. The incredible progress, though incremental, that has taken place in our electoral process is something that only people who are invested in it can observe and follow. In 2003, 2007, you could be voting, and the results of where you are voting will be announced, and you'll be hearing it. You are still voting and the results are being announced. We've moved from that to the point where we have even minimized voter identification theft through the permanent voters card and the beavers. The challenges that we face in our electoral process are a work in progress. And that is what it is. That's why it is called process. It is not an end. So People who are not invested will sit down in their homes and say, oh, the elections don't count. Today, you have a multi-party National Assembly. You have even though they are going back to their, to their homes, as we call it, through defection and all that. But at least in 2023, you had Labour Party, you had Social Democratic Party, you had PDP, you have APC in the National Assembly in good numbers. And there is nothing that shows you about the unpredictability of the process than that kind of effort that we are seeing. So we can be as disillusioned as we want to be, but the big challenge is that we are not putting a lot into civic education, into even getting citizens to know what progress has been made, and so that they can identify with that progress. And then if there are challenges, we communicate it in an open manner, in sincerity, in a way that people can understand that those challenges are not subterfuge. They are things that we can see on the earth, because we are not yet in heaven.
Okay.
So for me, therefore, is that it is a challenge of education. Education.
Let me get one final question for the break, because we're going to finish up.
Allow me to be unserious here. This last election, what I noticed brought people out and kept them in their polling units with their cards is Faji. As in, there was
party.
Sorry,
there was party at polling units. In my estate, for instance, all the landlords you ordinarily not see at CDA meetings were at the polling unit at the gate. They were there for 12 hours with bottles, partying. Is it possible that we do things out of the box, find ways to keep our people interested in polling units at with different ways, apart from this over seriousness things and criminality?
No, I said people came out because they had a way to make themselves enjoy.
Some people provided canopies, some people
there was
provided
food,
chairs.
they were drinking, and they came out to vote. Can we make it more interesting?
Unfortunately, we can't respond to that. But I have to let you go. But thank you very much, Mr. Ezenwa Iwagu, for joining us this morning. We've run out of time. But thank you very much. As a wrap-up, I really think, as much as I hear advocacy, which is important, but I think the best solution to this problem really is technology, which is what Bisi said earlier. Technology is the only way to ensure more people participate, because if not, without that, we're just going to be going around in circles. But thank you so much, sir, for joining us. That is all we can take on today's show. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now. Center is an electoral